Wilbon, we are going to start today with the protests all across America over the weekend, but we are again a sports show. There have been many sports luminaries who have taken to whatever airwaves they have to talk about their feelings. Included among them are Doc Rivers and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Doc's a Chicagoan like you. You know Doc a long time. I assume his personal story has resonance with you.
It does, Tony, because Doc Rivers is the son of a Chicago police officer for 30 years, the late Grady Rivers. And I want to try to read to you one line from Doc's statement. And he says that, I'm pulling it up here, he says that my father was a 30-year veteran of the Chicago Police Department, and if he were still with us right now, he'd be hurt and outraged by the senseless acts of racial injustice that continue to plague our country. And I know to some great degree, actually, how Doc feels about all of this unrest, like many people. And there are so many athletes. I mean, every league issued a statement. You mentioned luminaries, Tony. I know you're going to get to Kareem in a second. Michael Jordan issued a statement talking about his own depression and anger over this. And Grant Hill, I could go on and on and on. I won't mention each person. I saw J.J. Watt live, really struggling with his emotions, trying to get to a point. Carson Wentz. I mean, from sea to shining sea in every sport. How about in the Bundesliga where people had messages, under their shirts for George Floyd when they scored, and they raised their jerseys and probably got a penalty for that. So, Tony, does it matter? Yeah, I think it matters. Because in the absence of leadership at the highest level, people have to lead. Well, who are we going to look to? I hate turning things over automatically to celebrities, but you know what? If famous people who have in many ways the same feelings as everybody else, if they want to step to the front and take the lead in this and feel that their platforms and their voices can help in this situation, then good, I applaud them all.
Yeah, there's a fraying in America right now. There's this terrible confluence of the coronavirus and massive unemployment and sudden and violent racial strife going on right now. And people feel overwhelmed. They feel nervous. I feel nervous. I have great anxiety. Prior to what happened in Minneapolis, I had great anxiety, and now it's even more. You mentioned, and you're right about this, there is a vacuum of leadership in America. There are what are called influencers. They yell a lot, they're outraged a lot, but I don't know that they're leaders. I thought about this today, talked about it on my podcast. There are 4 living ex-presidents. There's Carter and Clinton and Bush and Obama. And I know they don't do this, they don't criticize, and I'm not even saying to criticize the current president. They don't sort of step in, and they weren't elected to solve this problem, Mike, they were not. But I'd love to see them. I'd love to see them on television. I think that even if you disagreed with them as presidents, you would say that they were fine, moral men who cared about the country. And I would love to see something like that. Do you mind if I talk about Kareem for a second?
I want to hear you talk about Kareem because I know you have known Kareem all your life like Doc for me.
Yeah, I mean, we come from the same place pretty much, the New York area, and we are of the same age. Kareem is a terrific writer. What Kareem was saying, and I guess I should preface this by saying that in our DNA, in our social and religious and cultural and racial DNA, everybody's a little bit different. You would not expect me to react the same way that you would in a certain situation. I would not expect you to react the same way to, for example, the walking into a synagogue in Pittsburgh and the gunning down of people for no reason at all other than the fact that they prayed in a certain way. So Kareem talks about how white people and black people can look at the same event and see it differently. That's natural for them to see it differently. He says that, let me get this because I want to make it clear. He talks about institutional racism that white people don't see. When it's pointed out to them, they react in a good way, the right way, but they don't see it originally. And he talks about the fact that black people are impacted directly and that they grow up expecting things to be bad. And he writes, and I want to quote this, African Americans have been living in a burning building for many years, choking on the smoke. Racism in America is like dust in the air. It seems invisible until you let the sun in. As long as we keep shining the light, we have a chance of cleaning it. He's He's really smart. He's a really good writer and a really reasonable person, but he does talk to the divide among us that I know, you sense as well.
Yeah, Tony, there were two people yesterday, Kareem was one of them, who protest is in their lives since they were young people. Remember the picture with Kareem and Bill Russell and Bobby Mitchell and all those others in 1967 rallying around Muhammad Ali. So I read that during the day and I watched Jane Fonda at night. I mean, Jane Fonda, who goes back 60 years to protest, Vietnam protests, Hanoi Jane, as she was infamously dubbed, and she was exercised, and she talked about white people and what should be done and what should be felt. And I find all this discussion necessary, Tony. It needs to lead somewhere, but it's got to start here. And it didn't start for whatever other reasons with so many other people, Laquan McDonald, and so many other people who were gunned down or had, a knee on their neck. Eric Gardner in New York, you can go on and on and on. Freddie Gray, the conversation has to go somewhere, but we got to have the uncomfortable conversation. I think that's what's happening now. I don't know whether it will go anywhere. I'm skeptical because it hasn't so far. I hope you're more optimistic than I am.
By nature, I may be a little bit more optimistic, but both of us went into the newspaper business because we were cynical at heart. So I don't know how optimistic either of us is. I will say that it feels like the start of something. It does.
Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.